Not online. Ms. Hamilton? Here. Mr. Heflin?
Here.
And Mr. Wood?
Here.
So we do have a quorum.
Yes.
All right, first item is minutes of the previous meeting of May 2023. Have one more correction, Carla. I think I was here and Chris was on Zoom. Is that not correct?
I believe that's correct.
On the very top, which is chairman, vice chair, committee members.
Okay. All right. Chris was there, you were here. I'll make that correction.
Are there any other corrections? If there are not, I'll entertain a motion to approve as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carried. Item B, review of bills expense report for 2023 for recommendation to city council.
Marilyn put these together and she couldn't be here today because of an appointment. And it's payroll week, so we didn't get to work together a lot. So we'll see if we can answer any of your questions. She does have all the reports for you to review.
So the total monthly bills for last month was 2,201,036.20. That includes a large expenditure of 111,937.73 for street improvements, 172,096.25 for the new skate park, 64,791.84 for the roof repair, 52,566 for the new dumpsters. And payroll was about 300,000 higher than usual due to accruing 1 week worth of payroll for the end of the fiscal year. And all these are within budgeted funds. And Veronica's on Zoom now.
And the 172,096 was a partial grant,
Yes.
and the roof repair was insurance.
Yes, that was our portion that we had paid. I believe there's some work that was not covered under insurance and we had to pay that portion.
Right.
And the dumpsters, was that repair or replacement?
Brand new replacement dumpsters. We ordered 75 new dumpsters. And we have about half of those out replaced now. And we're working on the other half.
Any other questions on the bill expense report? Pleasure to committee.
And the, real quick, the street repair, was that multiple projects or was that one project in particular or?
The 111, I believe, was one project in particular, and I don't have the street. I don't know which street we did on that one. I want to say it was Kilgore, but I could be mistaken on that. I can get you that information. And I
Thank
can
you.
email it to you.
What would we have done on Kilgore? Sarah?
I want to say we finished the, I might be mistaken, like I said, it might not have been.
We've had Kilgore finished for quite some time, and we had a strike for some.
And sometimes we get our invoices after the fact. So that's why I thought, because it was so big, that's why I thought it would be Kilgore, but I might
You
be
mind
mistaken.
sending us an email on that? and you
Not at all. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? What's the pleasure of the committee?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second to approve. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Item C, presentation and action of FY 22-23 fourth quarter budget adjustments.
Okay, Marilyn has presented the spreadsheet for the budget adjustments. So in the general fund, we have 103,087 increase in revenues. And that would be increase in franchise tax collections, and then based on GRTs, increased GRT collections. And I'll just go over the change in revenue, so I don't have to read it all. We have 60,461 increase in expenditures, for 46,000 increase in termination pay for police termination pay. And then 14,461 increase in salaries for the library full-time position. For the E911, we have 50,403 increase in revenues, and that's an increase in the state grants. 50,403 increase in expenditures, also for 80,000 to move equipment for maintenance contracts. Professional services of 55,501 and equipment of 185,904 for dispatch equipment. There was no change in fund balance in that one. It balanced itself out. Law enforcement was 300,000 increase in revenues, and that was $300,000 for the state law in recruitment appropriation. And then there was no net change to that fund balance. It was an in and out of 300,000. Lodgers tax, we had an increase in revenues of 3,578. The promotional, we had 7,155 increase in lodgers tax collection, 3,578 transfer, half of lodgers tax to non-promotional fund. And that was an increase in fund balance of $3,577. Recreation fund, we had $10,012 for pool supplies. We had increased our expenditures and used fund balance of the 176,000 funding remaining of the cigarette tax money that was put aside for recreation funds. Transit had no change in expenditures or fund balance. Cap repair replacement, F-111 renovation donation was at 28,830. And then the skate park grants was 172,097. So that was an increase in revenues of $200,927, which also went out, as you can see below. Wastewater water, 32,744 increase in penalty revenue, and then 26,041 increase to transfer to water improvement reserve, and that was $6,703 in increase in revenues, which was a $6,703 increase to fund balance. Water improvement fund, 26,041 increased transfer to water improvement reserve. That was a $26,041 increase in revenues and an increase to the fund balance. Economic development, 25,913 based on GRT collections. That was an increase in revenues of 25,000 and an increase to the fund balance. So she shows a net change to revenues of 720,229. The net change to expenditures is 621,803, and the total change would be 98,426 net increase to the fund balance. I will try to answer any questions you may have on this.
What is the increase in termination pay? For the police department?
On the police department,
It's for, when we have to pay them when they leave for their accrued vacation, things like that. We got to terminate 3 last year and 2 leave.
So that's not just a traditional payroll expense.
no.
Well,
I mean, you
It
don't,
is.
you don't
It's accounted
accrue
for,
that,
right.
so why is it an increase, I guess is the question. Is it should be accrued.
It should, right, it should be accrued. I'm not sure why. she
No,
considered it like
because
that.
we're on a cash basis. We don't accrue expenses like that. That's a little bit of the difference between
right,
government and your private bookkeeping.
everything we report to DFA is on a cash basis, not an accrual basis.
I get it, but don't you budget for vacations?
We budget for it, but we have to show it in the numbers to DFA. We have to show it as it would be a cash balance, like Mike was saying.
So what you do when you budget to show the state? And I don't know whether we still do this, but we should budget, most of the time, if we have any fund balances in the general fund, it's because of having vacancies that we budgeted for.
Right.
But on a line item like this, you don't know, okay, that's the reason we limit the vacation time. So you quit and you have 3 weeks vacation, then we have to pay you that, or if we terminate you, we have to, either way, it's yours, it's property right, and we pay you. So basically what we did here was we moved money from one line item to another line item to show that line item balance. If we really didn't spend $300,000
So we don't.
we're just showing why that one line item was
Where, yeah.
wasn't where it was supposed to be, so am I right?
You are right.
So,
So that's, well, and that brings up the next question is the extra $300,000. That we received from the state. And then also spent right away, is that right? Or is that
Yes.
just allocated somewhere?
No,
Or-
we received it and we spent it in this budget adjustment. We had to spend it by June, so we spent it by giving the stipend and the hiring bonus to any officers that we brought in.
And do we know how many officers we brought in and what the bonus structure was?
During that timeframe, we didn't bring in any that. The state set stipulations on that. They had to be a certified officer by June 30th. Well, once we got the money in March,
March, yeah, into March.
in March, there wasn't another academy class until next month. So we have brought on two that'll get paid out of the next year's allocation, which will be $150,000. Because the state said this was for recruitment and retention only.
Right.
We weren't able to, there was, all we could do is certain things. Probably the state said. So.
So the first round went
all
to
of these retentions
retention.
Last year. Next year, some of it's going to go to recruitment. So the recruitment for the two officers we did hire. That won't be, that are set to go to this August academy will get paid out of.
this
the
current
next
budget,
year's
the budget we're gonna approve today.
Right.
Now, when you say recruitment, do you mean higher salaries or are you talking
Two
bonuses?
employees.
And it'll be a bonus, it'll be a stipend only. We're supposed to not call it a bonus.
Stipend, stipend.
Yeah, it's gotta be a sign-on stipend.
The state will not let you say anything about bonuses in a budget.
In fact, next month we'll find out if next year, this next fiscal year is all 100% recruitment. And if we get any awards, it'll be $75,000 for this next year to cover salaries. From what they said with the intent of being able to free up our regular budget for recruitment efforts and things like that. So it's another.
So-
3-year thing.
Are you using that money? I mean, does all that money go directly to the new recruits? Or are you using it for marketing and advertising and things like that as well, or?
It has to go, it can only go towards their salaries and benefits. And the state's statements were that the intentions were to free up our budgeted money for those types of efforts.
So that would come
So
out
it
of the,
it supplants what those other efforts would be.
right,
And they were very specific in the law when they funded that.
that's a very good grant.
Other questions?
So my next question would be the pool supplies.
Yes, we have to buy chemicals. We have to buy,
Is the pool open?
pool's been open since May.
And well attended.
Yeah, we're getting great numbers.
Any other questions? What's the pleasure of this item?
I guess my only other question would be, do we need to budget for more pool supplies next year?
That will be something we'll have to discuss at a different meeting. I'm getting some information together for you guys to bring for what we're going to need for the pool. As far as a new pump, new chlorinator, we need new decking, we have to get a historical survey done on the pool. There's a lot of stuff that has to be done to get the pool upgraded. And so I'm getting information. I want to bring you a whole thing of information before I wanted to bring it to a finance meeting.
And I did see that on the ICIP plan.
Yes, it is.
Wouldn't you say that we probably went through a lot more chlorine stuff this year because of the heat?
Yes, so that does play a factor into the bodies in the pool compared to how much chlorine we do push out.
And the heat itself
And the heat is, yeah,
absorbs the chlorine, and that's the reason out here in Arizona they all have saltwater pools. Because they can't keep it up right now because of the heat. Any other questions? If not, we'll take the motion.
Move to approve the budget adjustments.
Second,
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Sign. Thank you, Madam Chair. All
I'm the
right.
backup today.
So. Our next item is the presentation and action on FY 23-24 final budget.
So Marilyn has the resolution in here for the final budget. I don't believe there were very many changes. Ms. Tyler, do you know if there were any changes?
The only thing she did is she lowered the amount for the property tax. Since the
Based on
increase, yeah, it wasn't as much as it originally was proposed. That she did lower that, and she said that's the only thing she did change between the preliminary and the final.
Okay.
Chair,
23-24?
we missed one.
What did I say?
Mike.
23
Well, what does the resolution say 22-23?
is the resolution needs to be corrected.
23 to 24. 23 to 24.
No, which one are you looking at?
Yeah.
Final budget adjustments, that is correct. It's
We missed
requested
D.
adjustments to the 22-23 budget.
Yes, but you missed the item D.
No, the budget adoption does have 23-24.
So I'm on the wrong page.
Right, but
Yeah.
we didn't go over item D. We didn't get a,
No.
Yeah.
The actual fourth quarter report. I apologize. Okay, let's go back to item D, presentation of the 22-23 fourth quarter report.
okay, so in this one,
Real quickly, just for Megan,
yes,
we file quarterly reports with DFA every quarter. But the new regulations require, they don't normally bring us the quarterly reports. But the new regulations for the past couple of years require that the council approves the final fourth quarter report.
by
So the
resolution.
wrap up of the year of every budget, total revenues, total expenditures, all that, so.
And I did call the Department of Finance and they met with me. We talked for about 2 hours and they were able to give me a lot of information, kind of help me understand. And then I did talk to a previous state auditor too, that explained more about kind of what the expectations are from city government.
So, with that said, thank you, Megan, you probably educate us.
Yeah.
Fourth quarter report,
Yes, so as you can see, we have to report to LGBMS, which is the state program that we report to. And it gives you an amazing recap. If anybody from council or finance wants access, we can always sign you up for access to that report. It's the same thing that Maryland gives you out of our Tyler system, but it's condensed. It's a much easier version to read. So this report goes over our cash, starting cash balance, our investments, revenues, transfers, expenditures, adjustments, balance reserves, and our adjusted balance. And it has every fund from the general fund all the way down to other trust and agency funds. And it starts with how much we started with each balance, if we had any investments, and as you can see, any revenues, transfers, and then our final adjusted balance. So at the end of the day, our ending balance totals is 10,790,183.21 on adjusted balances. We have 838,456.32 in reserves. We ended our year with 11,628,639.53. We had expenditures in the amount of 24,310,339.06. We zeroed out our transfers, which you always have to have a zero out on your transfers, otherwise the state will not accept it. So whatever you transfer out, you transfer in. Our revenues were at 24,782,603.59. And then our beginning cash balance was 11,156,375.
okay, particularly, I always like to look at the general thing, because some of the others are just.
Mostly grants, yeah.
So we ended the year in the general fund with an adjusted balance of 2,314,326.95.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We actually had a transfer out of the general fund of 2,225.19. Right?
That is correct.
And on the water enterprise fund, it looked like our expenditures were far greater than our revenue, is that correct?
Yes. And sometimes that has to do with if we get grant funding. Or we're preparing for grant funding, so we put in for a grant, we also try to budget for it, and sometimes we don't get the grant, so that will be adjusted at year end. And just Miss Megan, so you know, the enterprise fund, solid waste and water, they help fund the general fund as well, so it's a give and take in that area.
So the expenditures on the water fund. Do you have any idea if that was about the same as last year, or did it come in over budget, or?
The expenditures were higher this year than last year. And we had 4 wells we drilled during this budget year, so it was higher.
And but did we also have some grant money to help with that?
Right, and that is,
$300,000 in a appropriation.
yes, yeah.
And really, if you want to look at the balance in the fund. You would look at the general fund, you would look at the third from the last column. The 3 million in general fund, we actually have 3,152,783 in reserve. But we have to have 1/12.
Yeah.
Set aside, particularly, we have to have 1 month set aside. So we really, that's why it says the adjusted balance. So that's. And that's really the only account we have to have a designated reserve.
Yes,
And I did see that many other communities within the state went to a 2 and 12 reserve.
yes.
But the requirements of 1.
Yeah, it looks like
Yeah.
we were more on the rare side that didn't increase it.
Well, the bottom line is that first number. So, because if you increase that, you can't touch it.
Right.
And the interesting thing is counties have to have a 3/12 reserve. They have to have a quarter of us in reserve. Where cities only have to have 1 in reserve. Now, why the difference? I don't know, but that's the way it is.
We have more unfunded mandates.
They would argue that, so, and actually I would too. Any other questions on the fourth quarter report? What's the pleasure of the council or the committee? Sorry.
Move to approve the fourth quarter report.
Second. And I have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Madam Chair. That motion carries. Now then, we can go.
Yes,
Thank you for catching that for me. Presentation and action on the final budget. You started to say,
yes. So Marilyn, the only change from when you guys voted on the last budget was the property tax. We put it to the level that we approved it for. That should be the only change. All the other numbers are within the same budget that we approved at the preliminary.
my only question in the general fund, which is, I mean, the general fund and the enterprise funds, most of these other funds, I understand, are pass-throughs, right?
Right.
How did we end up after? So it looks to me like we actually overspent the budget by 340 or yeah. What would that be? Fund revenues of 11,064,492 and fund expenditures of 11,866,55. No, yeah.
The 346,114 was transferred out. $346,114 was a transfer out.
Looks to me like it was a transfer
No, I'm sorry, it was a transfer in, my apologies.
from reserve.
No, we didn't pull it from reserves, we pulled it from the enterprise funds. We don't touch the reserves.
Okay. But that still doesn't make that balance between those two. I mean, just.
The
looking-
expenditures were more than the revenues, is
Right.
what you're saying.
And it looks like the expenditures were like 800,000. I mean, I'm just saying 800,000 and 802 roughly.
Well, it's about 545,000 or so. You look at the difference between beginning cash and ending cash.
Wait.
which
You're talking about, are you comparing the fund revenues to the fund expenditures?
Yes,
Mhm.
Yeah, there is a difference. What we usually spend more than what we bring in. That's why we transfer monies in.
I understand that you do that. But usually we transfer the money at the very beginning of this, because, I mean, this. Okay. I guess my question. I'm sorry, this is looking at this year's budget, this coming year's budget. I
Right.
apologize for that.
Yes.
But normally, I guess my question would be, how did the general fund do? Because normally we have budget savings at the end of the year. Based on what we were talking about
Salary
earlier,
savings and whatnot.
salary savings and those sorts of things. Do we know what that budget savings was? And that budget savings is what we usually put into capital projects. Because we can't bank on it to be recurring revenues,
right.
right? So
So
Well-
what, if we don't spend it like in the salary savings, the fund stays the same. There's no change to the fund. I don't believe that she moves it out to put it into capital projects on salary savings. But if we have projects that we didn't spend money on, that will roll over into the capital projects.
I guess my bottom line question is. Did we have budget savings in the general fund? For whatever reason,
So if you look on the LGBMS budget report, we had more in. We had 11 million in revenues, and then we had 10 million in expenditures, and we transferred money out into another fund. That was the ending
I
budget.
guess to answer my question, I guess we have to go back to the previous.
Right,
Report, and we did have budget savings, we had revenues of 11,016 and expenditures of 10 million,
yes.
so.
And so if you look on this year's budget, the new budget, our budget reserves went up.
I thought we put those funds to like buildings. Or we allocated it somewhere.
That was my point, Madam Chair, is whatever the excess is, because we can't count on it being recurring.
Right.
Recurring is, and to whoever's point, we put that somewhere in a capital project, because we don't, that excess.
That would be a great question if Marilyn was here to answer that, and Twyla was not a part of her processes, so we can't answer that, but I can get something for you and email you on how she did that.
Can you get that to us by this evening?
I can sure try. Will she be in an
I
alternate?
think she's planning on being at
Yeah.
the meeting tonight,
Oh,
so.
okay. Okay. I think we just, some sort of capital project. Whether
capital.
building repair,
Yeah, I think we kind of scope it down and try to figure out.
Okay. I have a question. If we look at the 2023 budget, ending balance in the general operating fund was 3.152 million. Am I correct?
back to, I think he's looking at the fourth.
Yes, your ending balance was 3 points,
3.152.
right?
Can you explain to me how we end up with that balance in 22-23 and we start 23-24 with 5.355?
We get grant funding. And so anything that we put in for a grant, we budgeted for it. And that's why we do budget adjustments if we don't get it. So that was in preparation for all of the grants that we put in for. And I want to say we have 40 grants that we put in for at this time for projects. So for example, we're getting ready to do a water trust board loan. Our grant application, and we're gonna ask 21 million. If they give us 21 million and we've asked for it before this budget, it would have been budgeted in for you guys to see what that cost would be. And then if we don't get it, then that's when we do a budget adjustment to take it out. And we have to do that to prepare for what we expect to come in and what we expect to spend. So if it also has a match, we have to prepare for that as well.
Well, we could actually do the budget adjustment the other way around.
You can do it the other way around, yes. But
Either way, you're gonna do a budget adjustment.
right, either way
If
you'll
you
do
get,
it,
if you get the grant, you had budgeted for it,
right,
then you gotta do the budget adjustment. When you get the grant,
right. And the other way she prepares the budget, because it's an estimation, is she takes what we made in GRTs last year and she does an average and also adds that in too. So if there was any increase in GRTs, which we've had an increase in internet sales, that will also be added into the new budget.
So why wouldn't you keep beginning cash investments the same as the balance from the prior year and do that as a transfer in or whatever?
Like Mike said, we could do it either way. It's just the way that she's done it for so long that it works.
I mean, in all honesty, it's tomato, potato. I would rather see
But
it the
those
other
of
way
us,
around.
those of us that don't do it every day,
Right. I would rather see it the other way
we're
around.
tracking going from here to here, where did, you know?
Now would be the time to change.
And it's like that every year. We start, you know, we end up with X amount of dollars and then we start with way more dollars. How do we know where that money
You'd
came
like to see, Chris, you'd like to see the ending balance of 2023.
match
The
beginning
balance
the
of
start of
2024.
2024?
And then if we get a.
And that way we can see.
Because
Well,
they're added or
you're
subtracted.
ending.
They're never gonna match, Chris.
Yeah, it's never gonna match.
It's never gonna match because we may budget more revenues and less expenditures in 23-24 than we did over here. So, and then, and again, it's all projections, right?
Mhm.
So if we did that, then we're still gonna not have the same ending balance from 22-23.
Right.
Yeah, if it helps
But-
you think this isn't account balances, it's. I'm gonna allow X dollars to spend for this, and so it's not gonna match because your ending balance is after they've spent everything for the year, where your
Yeah, this is the
beginning
true-
balance is
This is a
more.
true number. and
Yeah.
This is an estimated number.
Yeah, the ending balance is a true number and the
Right.
beginning balance is estimated, and we have to show DFA what we estimate we're going to spend. And we have to put a cap on it because we can't go over it.
I think the one thing I don't understand, and I tried to do my best to be prepared. I pulled budgets from all over the state. The two I probably spent the most time on were Deming and Las Vegas, which are the most similar to us in terms of population. And everyone else has a balanced budget. Except for us that I could see. Everyone else has their expenditures being less than their revenues. And I don't understand why we're different.
Part of the problem is we haven't kept up with increases on rates, so that's why we're pulling from our enterprise fund. Part of the problem is we haven't kept up with some of the processes. To be good stewards of the financials, we have to keep up with the processes of following inflation, and part of that, we haven't been doing that. We've been able to maintain a lower budget, but now we're getting to a point with we're not able to stay there.
And I think my overarching question is, if we're the outlier in the state, if we're different than, I looked at Cloudcroft, Ruidoso, Deming, I looked at Las Vegas, probably the most, then what are we doing wrong? Because from where I see it, it looks like we're going broke. We're not able to maintain a balanced budget. So I feel like there's two areas to fix that. You can either increase your revenue, which I understand we're talking about with increased GRT, and I think that's great. Especially now with the state lowering our GRT, I think it's the perfect time to jump in where it's not felt. But then you also have to decrease expenditures. And I looked at just in terms of a percentage of a budget that we spend on each department. And there's some we're really low in, there's some we're really high in comparative to every other part of the state. But I did see consistently, lots of other communities are putting out an RFP for a consultant to come in and do a budget evaluation. That looks like it was pretty consistent on lowering the cost for municipalities. I did look at, in terms of full grant writing and other things that we can do to increase our revenues. But I just felt like ours is so different than everyone else in the state, and it doesn't make sense to me.
I'd like to sit, I haven't looked at those, I'd like to sit and look at those with you,
Yeah,
and I think maybe I could help you understand, I mean, you take Deming and Las Vegas, those are two communities on interstates. They're gonna have a different retail base than we do,
and I totally get that.
and they may have a different, a different structure, as to what. Anyway,
As far as a consultant, Twyla and I, since she's now our new finance director, we are going to bring in a consultant and it will be the auditors we've used. They're gonna come in and help us look at the health of our budget, make sure Twyla has all the training she needs. So that's definitely something we're looking at, and also a salary study to make sure that we're, we're being fair across the board, and that we're having a hard time keeping up with hiring because we're not paying what everybody else is. So I think these are steps that we want to take to improve our budget, but that's great information.
And the salary study was something I saw pretty consistently, but I never saw anybody use their auditors for.
well, we're not gonna use our auditors.
No,
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, that's
these
like-
auditors are no longer, they can't be.
They're not our auditors.
anymore.
now we
So
can use them as a
sure.
consultant.
Yeah, and since we're going to
You
new,
can't use your auditor to do that while they're actively doing your audit, but these guys have. What do we get, 5 years now?
8 years.
Hey, anyway.
Yeah, the Beasley
Fine.
Mitchell have been with us for 8 years, and I've talked to them about reaching out to them. And two, if y'all get together and do that, I would love to be included, because that would be a good learning experience for me too.
Yeah, if you're going over if you would include us in what you've looked at on other budgets.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe we just need to schedule a meeting for them. Cause I'd like to be included in.
We could do a workshop.
Yeah,
That'd be a great idea.
Yeah, that is a good idea.
Yeah.
Because like I said, it's like years ago. People would. Employees would come in and go, well, by God, Hobbs is doing this and doing that, and doing that. Understand it's a little bigger population, but it's also got a different economic base,
Yes,
and you have to take that into consideration. I mean, our economic base, in my opinion, is dwindling. And, some of these others. Well, I'll give you a great example. Let's look at Hobbs, Carlsbad, Lovington. Maybe not so much Lovington. But when the legislature did destination sourcing. Are you familiar with that? You should be particularly. But they lost millions of dollars. Because when they counted on Lucky Services, it's domiciled in Hobbs. And now Lucky Services, they have to pay the GRT where that service is performed and not where they're domiciled. When you think about that, if I'm drilling a well, that's $10 million. So the GRT on that $10 million now goes to the county and the bulk of the state. And not only that, but the portion that you pay to the state then gives you back 1.225 of that. So they lost not only their portion of the GRT, but they also lost the 1.225. And that's where the state had a huge windfall on that. The county, so there's just so many factors that go into, especially in the general fund. And that's mainly what you're talking about. So, but I will say that since I've ever been involved in these municipal budgets in Portales, the general fund is always counted on the transfers in from the enterprise funds, from solid waste and water. And it used to be millions.
My argument is that it should still be more than what it is currently.
I've already argued I've argued just the opposite. I've argued it needs to be less and less, and we need to figure out how to balance that without all this transfer. That's been my argument, so. But I guess that's what you have your enterprise funds for.
And a lot of municipalities don't have any.
Some do it, some have more, some of them have their own,
Privatize it, others don't have a water fund, or
Yeah.
that's one for the water,
right,
so
Yeah.
here's.
And part of the transfers too are to cover
but you're right.
that, the enterprise funds, they don't have finance director. They don't have somebody that runs payroll. They don't have that staff, so it's to cover
Those support services.
their supports rather than us billing them every month for that and then them paying the bill. They just pay, donate a percentage
We need to
of
start
different
charging
stuff.
them.
Yeah.
More rent on their facilities.
And there were two things that I saw most commonly, people that were, or I shouldn't say people, governments like Clovis, they completely outsourced the whole thing. That no longer were involved, or others like Las Vegas, that they're using it as their single most profitable item to help fund a lot of other areas.
Yeah.
And then they're using the grant writing and the ICIP money to make up the shortfall. And in the areas that I saw where ICIPs were more effective were generally where multiple communities or organizations came together to ask for ICIP money. I don't know. I just think there's some things that we could probably do better.
Absolutely.
But we need to have a
Always
class on how you fund the ICIP.
Yeah.
It's, I can't even get them there to understand.
Well, and then you look at that ICIP portal and it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You've got some places
I wouldn't
that,
even pay it.
are
Seriously.
getting bukus of money that are coming, that are really not populated, but trying to understand what their ICIP request looks like versus what they're getting.
I'll be happy to give a class on that. I think I understand that as well as anybody. So,
Absolutely.
all right. Rick, did you get your question answered? Because we've been on a real rabbit hole.
No, but that's okay.
But we have a plan to learn it. I like that.
The bottom line is,
I just think
This
when
figure,
you're in
that
one
figure.
year, you ought to start the same place the next year and then show what the additions and subtractions are.
As you do budget adjustments.
Right.
It's all in how we have to report to the state though, so.
Anyway,
and like for example. The general fund beginning cash balance versus the adjusted balance from the quarterly report. If you look, it doesn't say beginning cash, it says beginning cash and investments.
Right.
So those two meld together. But you have to report your investments separately. On the other forms than you do your actual cash.
Right.
Revenues.
You are right.
Okay, I don't have it in my truck, but I'll show you a balance for a little special hospital district. That would confuse you more than this one.
okay,
But yeah, yeah.
all right, let's keep going.
All right. So I guess where we're at is, are there any more questions on the budget as presented? I think that was a good discussion.
I do too.
So. And if there are no further questions, then we need to make a recommendation to adopt the final budget for the council.
Well, one more question I have is due to our current water situation, are we budgeting additional improvements to our well field and things like that
That
to
has been-
solve this issue, or what's going on with it?
But yes, within budget authority, we have budgeted for that. We're also going for a water trust board. And any loans that we get, or I'm sorry, I keep saying loans, any grants that we get pushed out by the COG and all of that, we're putting in for all of those. But we're not the only one in the state, so we gotta remember we're competitive. And I say that because every time I get a denial, I take it personally. I'm like, what did we do wrong? What can we do differently? And so I'm reaching out, asking questions, trying to learn from the process. But a lot of the times, if it's a federal grant, we're competing nationwide, and so we're Portales. We don't always get chosen. Good news is, and this isn't water, but it is on the University Portales Street project. We made it to round 2 with Ledger Fernandez's office for 500,000 in funding for those streets. So if we can make it to the next round, we will be approved, and Eastern offered to go in half on that match.
Back more specifically to your question. She mentioned that we have a $21 million request for the water trust board. And at one point in time, those were groans.
Yeah.
They were part grant, part loan. They're completely grants now. The water trust board last year had way more money than they had applications. And I've been told that we have a 90% chance of getting full funding on that grant.
And so what will that be used for?
That's completely to
Expand the well field,
expand the well field.
update our Lime Street tank. And any other infrastructure we may need, we're talking about possibly doing another standing tank like we have at Rotary. So anything we can do to improve the water resources.
One of the issues that we ran into, just for the record on your question. A couple of years ago, we were granted water rights on state land near our well field, all the way to the state line. Great. Well, then this land commissioner comes in, who is not a big fan of the industry, and required that any drilling on state land requires cultural surveys and endangered species surveys.
Biological and biological
Well,
survey.
that's,
Yeah.
yeah, basically, that's what I'm saying. So those are expensive surveys. So that's delaying the development of that part of our well field, which is adjacent to us. I actually have a meeting with the. land
So
commissioners.
why are we looking at expanded storage when we can't even maintain
Well, it's all
the
part of the
storage
grand plan.
capacity we have now?
It's all a
I mean,
preparation.
wouldn't a better use of the funds be used to replace that main line that runs across the track that ruptures every 6 months or a year?
We have that all into consideration, but when we plan for everything. So to give you a big picture, we need 60 million in funding to do everything we need.
Right. But it seems like storage. If we can't maintain the storage we have now, why is that a higher priority than replacing some of these lines that keep rupturing and emptying the storage that we have because we have a river running down 18th Street?
As you know, water leaks are unforeseen, and when they happen, we repair them as we can get to them.
No, I get it.
It's
The
not
main,
like,
the main line we have made huge improvements to.
Yes.
With valve, I don't know how much money we spent years in the previous years. To where. We
getting
can
them mapped,
isolate,
isolating them.
instead of having to shut the whole entire town off,
Right.
we can isolate that. And,
But short of, so what happened was is originally whoever put the lines in, that knowledge was in their head. And so as we go, we're mapping them and we're putting shut off valves in them. And short of going and digging up every single line, trying to assume we think we know where they're at, which would cost way more, we wait for the break to happen and then we fix it then. So that way it prolongs the life of the line.
literally, when. Newman Carter died and Bill Russell died. They had all of that in.
All your
their head.
knowledge
They knew
base.
exactly where everything was at, but there was no maps, there was no nothing. It was just those two guys.
That was one grant that the city of Carlsbad got approved and did. They completed, they hired a company and they ran tracer lines through everything. And they also ran camera systems that identified all their weak points and gave them a 5-year plan to redo their water infrastructure.
Yeah, we have
And map
ours
it.
80% done, so we're close. But like the one on university, all the university area lines are very, very old, and so we're waiting for them to unfortunately have their problems, and then we get to them as quickly as possible.
Other questions?
That's it.
Do we have a motion?
Yes,
Okay,
motion to approve. The 2023-2024 final budget. request.
No, a budget,
Proposed
Actual budget.
second.
motion and a second, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed?
Aye.
That motion carries. Our next item is presentation and requested relating to increase GRT for recommendation council via ordinance.
Carla added in here the FYI M121, it's the municipal grocery receipts tax local options information, it's a lot of information to read, but information can be powerful. But if you go back to the PowerPoint that Marilyn created at the beginning of the year when we were talking about this, the first page shows the state of New Mexico, Roosevelt County and City of Portales, what our GRT rates have been from 2002 to 2023. The second page shows GRT amounts enacted and available to enact. Right now, we're at 1.5625%. Non-referendum of 1.4375 and referendum of 0.125. We still have 0.9375% available to enact. Non-referendum will be 0.6125. Referendum would be 0.325. Each 120 or each 0.125, 1/8 of that generates $350,000. The non-referendum is 1.71, total tax rate of 8.675%. Referendum is 910. Total tax rate of 8.3875%. If we enacted it all, it'd bring in an additional amount of 2,625,000 at a tax rate of 9%. And like Miss Megan said, the state did lower their amounts, and this would be a less impact if we were to enact our GRT increase at this time. And Mike, I know you have some good knowledge on this, so I'm asking.
Well, my question is, I prefer we not take action on this today. We have until October, because we can take action on this today, we still don't see it till January 1.
Right, but we have to also run a notice of intent that takes 30 days. Marilyn said our best bet would be to get it in the August meeting, so we can start the process.
I would like to have a workshop on this prior to doing that, and then hopefully these people, but I say the entire council is a workshop on this. So that we're fully informed and we don't go do what we did on the property tax and get beat up in a council meeting. So this is just my preference. I would like in August and in September, we can do the notice of intent. Or the last meeting in August, where we're gonna have a last meeting in August.
We should.
Okay. And do a workshop for the entire council and finance committee. So that if this is not something we're gonna do in the meeting tomorrow night with absolutely no preparation. Other than we gotta have this.
And this is a workshop that you obviously would be open to the public, so it'd be like a town hall.
Sure.
Okay,
And we can have more of an open dialogue and not
which one?
a lynching. If you will.
Yeah.
Like we did on the property tax.
Right.
I understand the urgency in this and I understand. That this needs to be done, but I kind of want to do it more properly, that it's not just, we need it. Can we do it today?
I will send out some dates to see when everybody's available and we'll get it set up.
And
If that's the plan.
and say a workshop for the city council and the finance committee. And I mean, this is good information. Okay. And grocery receipts, you know, from my standpoint, who knows what's gonna happen in this next session?
Right.
All right. If they go through with the anti-pyramiding thing, we discussed this at our resolutions committee on Saturday. They're willing to make up a deal with us, and this is in addition to this conversation, but. If they do the anti-pyramiding, it's gonna hurt Albuquerque. It's not gonna hurt us. We don't, okay. Pyramiding. Tax wise, we all do it, okay? So it's like. Megan pays a GRT on her revenue. And then she does a service for me. And so they stack GRT. So what this proposal is architects, engineers, and accountants. They will only pay one GRT. They will not pass that GRT on to me for the services that they have. Right, or vice versa. Anyway, so they won't double tax that. Pyramiding is double tax, right? I tax it here and I tax it again here. Now we'll still have some of it, but that's why I say the pyramiding won't hurt us so bad, because we don't have a lot of those services that are out of our community. But it will hurt Santa Fe, Las Cruces, Albuquerque tremendously. So the proposal is, and the governor wants this anti-pyramiding bad. I'll tell you how bad she wants it. We killed it last year. And I was at a social event and she cursed at me. But so the trade-off would be that to help Albuquerque make that up, the request will be to increase the 1,225 to 1.4, which would be a significant increase. So if we do something like this, and then we get that increase, we could be pretty sweet. But the biggest problem with GRT right now is, what is the state gonna do to us? Because that's what they've killed us. There are over 300 exemptions to GRT. And who pays that most? Local governments.
The grocery exemption was the hardest.
So, oh, there's no question, and especially in our kind of community where that's 35%.
This is
Of
like
what-
the cannabis, everybody thinks.
And then they take, and then not only do they do that, but they come back 9 years later and say, oh, we made a mistake. We're not gonna let you have that anymore. We're gonna start clawing that back from you. Right. You know,
They're trying to get out their
over a
insurance
period.
right now.
so that's kind of the reason I like to have a workshop. I totally reluctantly understand why we need to do this. But I would like everybody to understand the whole thing, and if the public wants to be here, the public can be here, but I would ask that we do that rather than say, hey, we need to do this, and it's on an agenda tomorrow. And we feel like the public didn't have any input if they chose.
I do think one of these numbers is wrong. Our total tax rate right now, I'm pretty sure is 7.9375 instead of 7.875.
Which page are you on?
This one, the one with,
Just over.
the one with the charts that Chad likes.
Which charts? Good page.
The last one you said?
I'm pretty sure it's 7.9375.
The state gave us.
Or if not, then I am charging our customers the wrong tax rate currently.
We will get that corrected.
And it could be me. You should double check.
Let's hope.
Yeah, it's probably in.
Yeah, why did our GRT go from 1.5625 to 1.5? Where it's been consistent at 1.562.
I think that's the difference. That's my guess, but
It looks like she had a projected tax rate change due to decrease to state tax by New Mexico legislature with House Bill 163.
Well, I get it that the state's portion went from 5 to 4.875,
And we went, she's
but
showing.
why would ours change?
Ours shouldn't change.
yeah, I did just verify 7.9375.
Okay,
What's 7.875 plus
Right.
0.0625?
What did you say it was, man?
7.9375 is our total tax rate. I think it's just a typo.
7 point what?
9375.
Minus 7.875 is 0.0625.
Mark, since this is
I think
on-
what happened was she just brought that number down from the top one and didn't put the 625 at the end of that number to balance it out.
yes.
I think you're right.
Mark, since this is an action item and it's on the agenda, do we need to table it then? Or do we proceed?
You can make an action to do what he's requesting. You can make the request to do a workshop town hall.
I think that'd be the best bet.
I just think what happened to us on property tax.
Fair
And I think we give more public notice before we do something like this,
I agree.
and this looks like we're trying to sneak something in at the last minute again.
Right.
And
But I guess my motion is gonna be, I motion to have a town hall meeting, involve the public as much as possible before it's put on the agenda.
Okay,
or say a workshop to
A workshop / with public input. Before it's put on the agenda.
we can do that. I will see what,
Second,
Any further discussion? Does everybody understand the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Final item, other business, any matter not known about or which could not have been reasonably foreseen prior to the time of the posting of this agenda.
I just wanted to talk a little bit on the cannabis. I know a lot of the discussion is where how much we're getting in cannabis, between 5,000 and 7,000 a month. 5,000 gets us 30 feet of road repair, or maybe 150 potholes. So people are wanting to know kind of how, I guess the notion is we're making more than we are, and we're not, so we're just trying to get the word out there that we're not making as much as people think we are.
Maybe it would be worth it to come up with some kind of a chart that shows, hey, here's the total tax, this is where this goes, this is where this goes, and this is the city's portion.
We did did you know on our Facebook, so we're hoping that helps.
You might add that to that agenda for that workshop, I think it. Because I think a lot of people are going, why are you gonna raise this? We're making all this money off of cannabis.
No, we're not.
You'd think with 9,000 shops in town, we would.
But medical's not taxed, and whatever the state gets, we get that much.
Medical is not taxed.
Medical is not taxed.
If you have a medical
So
card,
you-
you don't pay taxes.
If you, and get this, if you have a medical card, you can buy a higher concentration
Yes,
than you can if you're doing recreational. If I was that, I would go get me a medical card, so I didn't pay tax. And I think that's what a lot of people are doing.
they are, because doctors hand them out like nothing. All you gotta do is say, I have PTSD, and here's you a card.
You can go to ROV's website for the cannabis control division and see the numbers that are being put out for each dispensary in town. And if you'll compare them to other cities, you'll notice some of ours are much higher in medical than recreational.
If I was a big user, I'd go get a medical card just to save the tax miss.
The other question I would like to know the answer to is, since the state has gone to the, what'd you call it, where they tax where the services for
The destination sourcing.
the destination sourcing. And also supposedly we're getting taxes from online sales now as well. I'd like to see the difference in our tax revenue since those have kicked in as well.
There has been an increase on that budget.
I'm gonna tell you guys this right now. Some of these questions you're asking, TRD cannot answer.
Yep.
TRD cannot answer specifically internet tax
Nope.
to some degree. They can't, they just lump it in there. We have asked the state and asked the state. Now, what you might do is, the league hired it from New Mexico Tech, it's called ICASA.
Yeah.
And they can drill that down better than TRD can. And so being a member, we pay that. So to get some of this information for that workshop, we might see if we can get that through the league, through ICASA. How they can get it, we don't know.
Cannabis is the same way. So there's a portion of it we can't get broken down either. So I will reach out and see what I can get for us information wise.
You know, you can go on to TRD and see what and it's called an RP 500, and you can look at that RP 500 every month. And what are we, 60 days delayed?
I think it's 30. I don't think it's 60 days.
Okay, 30, 60 days
Sometimes
delayed.
it's 60, but yeah, I think it's.
But all it is the gross that's distributed back to the communities from GRT.
Right.
And,
Has it broken down by city and county?
yeah, but it doesn't have it broken down by industry.
No.
And the other thing I'd like to know is kind of what the status is between negotiations with the county for the EMS and fire services.
I think I don't have an update. I'm not
We're-
getting.
I can give
Yep,
you
yeah.
an update on that a little bit on that. We're negotiating, but we come to a point where this all July, either one of us was on vacation. So we could only place that.
So basically, no progress.
So
Last I knew, there was some kind of a mediator that was involved. And
It was
Well, they asked-
suggested.
They requested. a
they
meeting.
requested me leader, and that was the last. Veronica, can you add to this? Maybe I think our last meeting was May or June.
No, it was the beginning of June and then we've all kind of been on vacation, so we are supposed to pick it up the first part of August. We don't have a date set, but I can text everybody to set a date and then update you on that, Chris. But yeah, no, we're still going forward because you know, we need to get it done, so
And
we're
just-
still working on it.
And just to give you a heads up, the county, they charge us $55 a day for inmates, which is less than what the state requires in the charge. I think it's 156, cheap, 158.
154.
54. So they sent a notice of intent that they're gonna increase the cost. The notice of intent doesn't say for how much. So we're in the progress of working that out, but that will be another increase to our budget.
So, and that is part of, what we're negotiating as well. Because they did bring that number to Chad and I.
Statute pretty vague, it just says reasonable amount per day. But
Any other questions? Go ahead. Chris.
No.
I'm sorry.
I'm good. Okay, you gotta get.
No, that's all right. Okay. I drive fast. It's 20 minutes.
Well, I gotta get.
Okay. Are there any other business? Seeing none. We're done. Thank you, guys.